A very good afternoon to one and all. On behalf of my co-authors, I, Burgess Driver, will be presenting a brief overview of our paper. As the title suggests, this paper is the summary of the research conducted as part of a project to formulate statutory urban design and architectural guidelines for the people's capital city of Amaravati, Andhra Pradesh. As urban development involves a major physical, social, political, economic, and administrative transformation in existing villages, it is essential to understand the various aspects associated with the integration of villages into new urban developments. Kindly stand by as I share our presentation. So, while urban villages have their merits in the socio-cultural and economic value they bring to cities, they are known to lack basic services and infrastructure, susceptible to pollution, unauthorized construction, and increased population densities. This pattern is commonly seen in cities like Delhi, Mumbai, Chandigarh, and Navi Mumbai, and gives rise to concerns of livability in urban villages. In the case of the proposed People's Capital City of Amaravati, the urban development include 29 existing agrarian villages, all of which were at the crossroads of rapid development. Therein, it was critical to propose a framework and guidelines for the integration, which would ensure a continuance in livability as urban transformations took hold and help minimize potential negative social and environmental impacts that would otherwise affect their functioning. An emphasis on the need for executing village integration guidelines is put forward in the paper due to these key reasons, among others. As three villages, Nelapadu, Malkapuram, and Rayapudi, were pre-assigned to the authors for preparing integration guidelines, and given time limitations of the larger project, the methodology of the paper consisted of a preference-based approach in which similar villages were initially identified in the context of the nearest accessible planned city, Navi Mumbai. Accordingly, 5 villages were initially identified that correlated to those in Amaravati in terms of similar challenges presented due to the introduction of the statutory urban plans. Of these, 2 villages were eventually taken up, the original Vashi fishing village in the Vashi node and the Shabas village in the Belapur Central Business District node, for detailed field visits. Concurrently, secondary data related to village integration was obtained through the Development Authority, APCRDA, and for related literature reviews from multiple desktop resources. The purpose of the literature reviews was to understand the aspects of integration and correlate them with aspects of livability, as empirical evidence suggests that historically urban villages in Indian cities lack planning vision amongst a myriad of provisional deficiencies. From both primary and secondary data assessments and a broad assessment of Vaughan's framework for livability, a framework for integration was accordingly developed. Considering the similarities in the outcomes of previous studies on livability, urban, physical, social, cultural, economic, and environmental concerns emerge as important considerations in formulating integration frameworks. In the case of Navi Mumbai, the total Greenfield development area was 343.70 square kilometers, of which only approximately 1% land consisted of Gauthans. However, in the case of Amaravati village land in particular, which was pulled together, accounted for close to 70% of the total master plan area. Therefore, ensuring suitable interventions and provisions for project-affected families, and therein concerns regarding the livelihood of the villagers, continued sustenance of resource commons, dissolution of prevalent local governance structures, among other dilemmas, were pertinent to address. The case of the 2 villages in Navi Mumbai were elaborated upon through a series of recorded observations made during field visits. Using the pillars distilled from the literature reviews, which include physical, sociocultural, environmental, administrative, and economic, the demerits assessed that in the case of Vashi Gauthan, were that the village was fragmented due to the proposed arterial road network. There were dilapidating natural features, primarily water bodies in need of conservation, a change in primary to tertiary economic activities, that is fishing to service-oriented jobs, and change in the built typology that otherwise affected the inherent characteristic form of the village, which makes it distinct as compared to the developments proposed in the nodal plan. While Shabas, which is actually in proximity to the SIDCO administrative headquarters, demonstrated promising merits across all pillars, it was weak in the environmental part, as again water bodies and wells were undermined. Rayapudi and Amaravati, in terms of physical and environmental considerations, reflected similar demerits when compared to Vashi Gauthan, whereas in the case of Malkhapuram and Nelapadu, there appeared to be additional deficits in case of key healthcare and education amenities, alongside water body conservation and redevelopment of existing buildings, which would otherwise affect the characteristic fine-grained form of the villages. 4 distinct stages of integration were observed in Navi Mumbai: transition, transformation, aspiration, and assimilation. These stages of integration are on the lines of the 3 stages of transformation observed in the fringe villages at the rural-urban interface in the development of Delhi. In Navi Mumbai's case, in the transition stage, rounds of negotiation between administration and villagers took place for a mutually accepted settlement policy. Some villages, such as Belapur, gained importance due to the proposal of the Central Business District, and villages such as Vashi experienced tremendous physical and economic transformation with better connectivity. The transformation stage consists of spatial and economic change taking place in the villages, such as the provision of formal utilities, improved rail and road connectivity, improved social infrastructure, change of occupation from fishing to service-oriented, small business or contractual labor jobs, rapid development to provide cheap rental accommodations. The aspiration stage reflects stability in the community, where there is a growth of home run and small-scale commercial businesses, development of recreation-related infrastructure, such as cricket grounds, gymnasiums to meet the needs of a health-conscious community, and redevelopment of buildings in a visual language that is like the architecture of the surrounding city area. Assimilation stage represents absorption of the village into the urban system and reinforcing its importance to the integration of village infrastructure with the city's open infrastructure system, provision of cheap rental accommodation options and fresh food markets to city dwellers, and redevelopment and regularization schemes by regulatory agencies. Accordingly, suitable diagnostic guidelines were prepared under each of the 5 pillars of integration fixated, applicable to the 3 villages of Amaravati. The physical integration considers the proposition of key mobility infrastructures necessary to ensure that movement and the livelihoods remained unaffected. The social guidelines were multifarious and proposed upgradation of existing amenities, preservation of traditional spaces, and heritage features vital to tourism, proposing mixed-use developments with retail frontages for ensuring livelihood security, with rental accommodation on upper floors for the working population. In terms of environmental integration guidelines, suitable infrastructure again for ensuring that water features do not get fragmented were critical, alongside ideating riparian and suitable soil stabilization strategies as applicable. Additional monitoring and surveillance measures through the advanced locality management model for sensitive natural features were also proposed. For administrative guidelines, detailed local area plans, governance mandates involving local representation, and setting up of a grievance redressal mechanism were key in addressing future land-related disputes raised by the people. In economy-related integration guidelines, stabilizing existing activities through the formalization of local markets was necessary. Setting up of small-scale food processing units and a dairy cooperative was also suggested, alongside skill development training spaces and the promotion of regionally manufactured handicrafts and textiles. In conclusion, we, the authors, note that these integration guidelines are purely contextual and applicable to the case of Amaravati and are not meant to reflect a larger one-size-fits-all approach pending further research. As far as governance frameworks are concerned, it is the development authority which can implement these guidelines with further assistance of the local municipal body yet to be established. Due to an argued reduction in the value of sensitive clearances and assessments required to initiate and sustain greenfield developments, the authors further firmly recommend the proposition of a new category of impact assessment, that is the development impact assessment, which can cohesively account for a more robust and contextual scope of social and environmental impact assessments in the urban context, and which can involve guidelines such as these, among a myriad of others, to practically assist entities entrusted to act upon them for sustainable urban futures. We thank the review committee and the audience and look forward to questions as time permits. Thank you.